Why, David, has it taken so long at this point for anybody else to develop this or come up with this?
This type of technology?
Yeah.
Well, this is what's really interesting, is so many people are moving towards this discovery of zero-point energy, and it really is the holy grail. And one of the reasons it's so hard is that, yeah, Tesla did it. He did it with the Earth itself. He actually decoded the Earth's harmonic code. It's just because there's not enough money. There's not enough money and time going into it. There's incredibly brilliant minds out there, and most of the people that I know in this field are just dying to get some research funding so they can do some experiments in the lab. I happened to get a little bit of research funding because I had some partners who wanted me to see if I could charge, stone technology to affect the energy field of the human body. And by accident in the background, I produced an effect of over unity. And I used some materials and designed a Tesla coil in a way that's never been done before. But yeah, there are other people that are doing it, but the process of actually testing, is it just the voltage going up? Is it the amps going up and the volts going down? That has to be verified every single time.
That is amazing work, David.
Well, so this is just the beginning, but where it all started for me is my UFO sighting at Berkeley in 1968.
Explain that briefly.
Really quickly, coming home from elementary school, 7 years old, there's a flying saucer up there and hundreds of people, pointing at it in pandemonium. And then it disappears in a blink of an eye 20 minutes later. But over the pursuing weeks, I kept dreaming about the UFO's propulsion system as if they were communicating to me how it worked. And what I saw was one set of lights, green, blue, spinning one way on the same axis, and then orange, yellow spinning counterclockwise to that rotation on the same axis. And that was part of the secret. At 7 years old, and it wasn't until I discovered that Bardeen, Cooper, and Schieffer won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1972 for spinning electron pairs counter-rotational to each other on the same axis, and they produced superconductivity. When I realized that actually, was an actual, mechanical discovery in the quantum universe, that there really was something to this counter-rotational spin, I knew that there was a purpose for me receiving that information. And it turns out that is the key to understanding the hidden harmonic codes of the universe.
Now, are you saying, though, that you are at a point now where you can harness the energy from the universe, or you're just dabbling?
Well, I can say that I'm at the point now where I've taken these measurements, that I can build a device that is similar to, you think of the zero-point energy field. There's no temperature at all. It's absolute zero at minus 273 degrees in this void where Max Planck discovered. And Einstein says, no, there's no energy in the void, because if there's no mass, there's no energy. And Max Planck said, well, wait a minute. 10 years later, in 1913, Einstein and his partners come forward and realize, yes, the void is where all the energy is in the universe. And what I'm saying is that is what's amazing about the zero-point field, because the temperature is zero. Why should you have any energy? Because you need heat normally to get energy in some form. So how does that energy of absolute zero actually flow into the physical universe? How do we actually extract it? Well, it turns out that what I've discovered is these mathematical harmonic codes are everywhere. They're all around us. The symbols of what clues us into how to mathematically determine where they are natural architectures, natural sacred geometry. And this is where I started to discover where they were. I took a natural six-sided quartz crystal, and I noticed that it's a hexagon, and you can pick up any one that's natural, that's not man-made or not cut. And you'll notice that it's not a perfect hexagon. It's got 6 sides, but each side is slightly different length and different angle. This is really critical.
Yep.
And what it is that Newton's third law, which we're so, bent on trying to protect, that there's a finite amount of energy in the universe that keeps converting itself from mass into electromagnetism and back to mass. But it's the same amount of energy that always existed. And I've always had a problem with that, especially with the expanding universe model. And essentially, what I discovered is when I was looking at the wavelengths of the counter-rotational spin, interesting enough, of all the subatomic particles, I realized all the wavelengths were different, and that violated Newton's law. And I didn't know why anybody didn't notice this, because I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of particles. Now, note that, going back to my UFO experience in 1968, that I saw the lights spinning counter-rotational to each other, and one was a set of blue-green lights, and another counter-rotational was red-orange. Well, it's interesting because blue-green is a shorter wavelength or higher frequency waveform than red, orange, or yellow, which are longer waveforms, which means between them, if two waves are spinning against each other, they're competing with each other, which means when they actually fight with each other, they don't cancel out to an equal and opposite. Newton's third law states that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And over, wherever I looked in the quantum universe, at the measurements of every particle that exists in the subatomic universe, from an electron, positron, to a proton, antiproton, to a muon, anti-muon, tau, anti-tau, on and on it goes, quarks, anti-quarks, they all spin counter-rotational to each other. So this is the key, this counter-rotational spinning, and the differential is the leftover harmonic energy between those spins that I'm actually talking about. So I knew that there was a problem, and I wrote physicist Frank Close, who wrote the Particle Odyssey, and I said, have you noticed this, that the electron-positron has different wavelengths, therefore when they compete against each other, they're not equal and opposite, and why do you have all the subatomic particles counter pairs equal and opposite mathematically? And he said, that's just a coincidence. I mean, that's only one photo. So I sent him more and more photos where every single time this was happening, and he went silent. So then I realized that if pairs of waves were vibrating against each other, in fact, you can do a simple experiment right now, where you take your hands and you put them in the heart prayer position in your heart, and start moving in a circle clockwise with both hands together. That's what happens when two waves are in a synchronicity. But when you rub your hands against each other, you get friction if they're spinning opposite to each other. And in that friction space, you're producing a vibration, sound, energy. That's where the differentials are. So the next thing I did, and this gets into stones, which will then lead into, what are the Great Pyramids and what is the mathematical proof.
And your theories about this one, they're absolutely stunning. Go ahead.
So what I did is I took my six-sided crystal and I measured in centimeters and millimeters, to be very precise, all the sides. And I realized all these sides are different. I had two equal sides at 4 centimeters. Then going clockwise, I had 3.3 centimeters, the next face 3.6, and the next one 4.6, the next 3.7, and then I come back to a 4. And Marcel Vogel, really, I don't know if you know the story of Marcel Vogel, the computer scientist at IBM, who actually built the first hard drive systems at IBM, who became fascinated with crystals. So much so that actually it led to, at Stanford University in 1993, they actually put a movie of the Mona Lisa and a separate movie of a hummingbird flapping its wings in 3D and stored it in a crystal, and found that crystals will become the hard drives of the future because they have memory. So, and what Marcel Vogel was doing is he was watching crystals being born in their liquid state going to solid state, and they used invisible wavelength cameras looking into the ultraviolet. They could see the waveforms, imagine like two ocean waves colliding into each other, that were vibrating together that formed the crystal. And then the crystal goes into a solid state, and then you have this frozen piece of silica. And then with that, you can actually understand what created this architecture. And why is it that in sacred geometry, and this is where we're going to turn a page on sacred geometry, and I'm going to reveal something in the Great Pyramid that is utterly miraculous. Why in sacred geometry do we make all of our sides equal? And I realized that all I had to do is do a new type of math, very simple division, which you can really pretty much master by the time you're in grade 10 even, is divide each of the sides into each other to see what their common ratios are, both clockwise and anti-clockwise on the crystal. And if all of the sides of a hexagon or a three-sided triangle are equal, they'll divide into each other one time, and you'll get static energy, or energy that can't.
One more time on that one.
Well, if you take, for example, a triangle, very, very simple triangle, And all the sides, the lengths of the sides are exactly the same.
Okay.
If you divide each side into each other, you're always going to get a 1. And that was the problem I had with sacred geometry, because in nature, all the sides are not equal. So I thought, what does that mean? Nature could never be wrong. And when I did the math, clockwise versus counterclockwise on the crystal, the numbers it generated on the ratios were, oh my God. Like, for example, side 1 was 4 divided by 3.3. I got 1.212121212, like a harmonic repetition, right? And the next side was 3.3 centimeters divided by 3.6. I got 0.91166666666, and I got all these sixes. And on this went, no matter where I took a natural crystal and did the math clockwise and anti-clockwise, I got these codes that were repetitive infinities, like 108, 108, 108, 108, and they go forever.